Welcome to Curiosity Unlocked. I'm Tom, and today we're going to be looking at a story that I think really redefines resilience. We're talking about Tsutomu Yamaguchi, the only person officially recognized as surviving both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings. And you might be thinking, how could someone possibly endure such a thing? Well, to help us unpack the details and understand the incredible life of this double hibakusha, that's the Japanese term for an explosion-affected person. I'm joined by Sam, an expert in Japanese history and culture.
Hi, glad to be here.
Okay, Sam, before we jump into August 1945, can you kind of set the stage for us? What was life like in wartime Japan for someone like Yamaguchi?
Well, you have to imagine Japan in the early 1940s was a nation consumed by war. There was intense pressure, especially for those working in industries crucial to the war effort. Yamaguchi, for example, was a marine engineer for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, a company deeply involved in wartime production.
So he's right in the thick of it. But was everyone fully on board with the war?
It's fascinating because despite the prevailing nationalism, Yamaguchi actually harbored deep reservations about the war. He confided in his family that he didn't believe in it, and even contemplated taking their lives if Japan faced defeat. It reveals a hidden layer of complexity beneath the surface of wartime Japan.
Wow, that really adds a whole new dimension to his story. Here he is working for a company fueling the war machine, yet internally grappling with these profound doubts.
Exactly. This internal conflict makes his journey even more compelling. Now let's fast forward to that fateful day in August 1945. Yamaguchi is on a business trip to Hiroshima, just 3 kilometers from ground zero when the atomic bomb detonates.
3 kilometers. It's hard to fathom being that close to such unimaginable destruction. What details do we have about that moment for Yamaguchi?
Imagine the searing flash, the deafening roar, the sheer force of the explosion. Yamaguchi later described seeing the B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, and then 2 small parachutes before the world erupted in blinding light and heat. The blast ruptured his eardrums, leaving him temporarily blind and seared severe burns onto the left side of his body.
It's almost impossible to comprehend the sensory overload and the terror of that experience. But remarkably, he survives this.
He does. Though the city around him is reduced to rubble, he manages to find shelter, rest, and incredibly locate his colleagues who were also in Hiroshima. They spend the night huddled in an air raid shelter trying to make sense of the devastation they've witnessed.
So at this point, he's already faced unimaginable horror and somehow come out the other side. But his journey is far from over right. He decides to head back home.
Yes, he boards a train back to Nagasaki with his colleagues the very next day, still bearing the physical and emotional scars of Hiroshima. He arrives back in Nagasaki, a city that at this point, still feels normal, untouched by the horrors he's just witnessed.
Right.
He goes back to work at Mitsubishi, and on August 9th, he's recounting his Hiroshima experience to his supervisor.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that conversation?
Yeah.
Trying to explain something so utterly unprecedented and terrifying?
It must have felt like describing a nightmare that no one could truly grasp. And as he's reliving this, the unthinkable happens again.
You're exactly right. As Yamaguchi is speaking, the second atomic bomb detonates over Nagasaki.
Oh my gosh.
Once again, fate places him a mere 3 kilometers from ground zero.
Wow.
It's a coincidence that defies all odds.
From Hiroshima to Nagasaki twice within 3 days. It boggles the mind that anyone could survive this.
While he was unhurt by the blast itself this time, the trauma was compounded. His bandages from Hiroshima were ruined, he couldn't replace them, and a high fever and week-long illness followed. It's as if his body was finally succumbing to the cumulative effects of radiation exposure.
This brings up an important point about the long-term health challenges faced by hibakusha. What kind of effects lingered for Yamaguchi after these bombings?
The consequences of radiation exposure are insidious. Yamaguchi suffered hearing loss and his left ear developed cataracts, and later in life was diagnosed with leukemia. His wife, also a Nagasaki survivor, faced a long battle with radiation-related kidney and liver cancer before her death in 2008. Even their children experienced health issues attributed to their parents' exposure.
It's a stark reminder that the devastation of these bombs extended far beyond the immediate blasts, impacting generations. But amidst this suffering, there's a remarkable transformation in Yamaguchi's perspective. Initially, he didn't dwell on his double survivor status, but that eventually changed.
Yes, his evolution is truly fascinating. It wasn't immediate, but as he aged and reflected, his view of the bombing shifted. He came to see his survival as a responsibility, a platform to speak out against nuclear proliferation and the horrors he'd witnessed.
It's an incredible shift, from wanting to bury the trauma to using his experience as a catalyst for peace. How did this manifest in his actions?
Yamaguchi didn't just speak abstractly about peace. He actively engaged in the anti-nuclear movement. He wrote a powerful memoir titled A Life Well Lived, a collection of poetry, and even participated in a documentary called Twice Survived. His words resonated deeply with audiences as they grappled with the implications of a nuclear world.
And these efforts weren't confined to Japan, were they?
No, his message transcended borders. Twice Survived was screened at the United Nations, bringing his story to a global stage. He used every opportunity to advocate for a world free of nuclear weapons, arguing that their very existence threatened humanity's survival.
So he goes from an engineer caught in the machinery of war to this powerful voice for disarmament. Did his efforts receive any official recognition?
Yes, in 2009, Yamaguchi finally received official recognition from the Japanese government as a survivor of both bombings. This was a significant moment, as it meant acknowledging the dual tragedy he'd endured and validating his advocacy.
This recognition must have felt like a vindication, a way to ensure his story wouldn't be forgotten.
He saw it as a way to educate younger generations about the horrors of nuclear war and inspire them to work towards a more peaceful future.
It's incredible to think that despite experiencing 2 atomic bombings, Yamaguchi lived a long life. He passed away in 2010 at the age of 93.
It really speaks to his resilience, doesn't it? Even after facing such unimaginable hardship, he chose to embrace life, raise a family, and dedicate himself to a cause greater than himself.
His story also serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of bearing witness. He didn't shy away from sharing his experiences, even though reliving those moments must have been incredibly painful.
Absolutely, he understood the weight of his story. He knew that by speaking out, by putting a human face on the abstract threat of nuclear war, he could potentially make a difference.
And in a world where the threat of nuclear weapons still exists, his message feels more relevant than ever.
It does. Yamaguchi's story personalizes the issue, forcing us to confront the very real human cost of these weapons. It's no longer a distant concept, but a lived reality, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences they can unleash.
There's a quote from Yamaguchi that really captures this sentiment. He said, "I can't understand why the world cannot understand the agony of the nuclear bombs. How can they keep developing these weapons?"
It's a question that should haunt us all, Yamaguchi's life, and his advocacy challenged us to think critically about the choices we make, both individually and collectively, and to work towards a future where such horrors are relegated to the past.
So as we conclude our deep dive into the remarkable life of Tsutomu Yamaguchi, what's the key takeaway you hope listeners will remember?
I think it's the understanding that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, hope and the human spirit can prevail. Yamaguchi's story shows us that we have the power to choose how we respond to adversity, to use our experiences to make a positive impact on the world.
Well said. Sam Yamaguchi's life is both a testament to human resilience and a call to action for all of us to work towards a more peaceful and just world. And that's our deep dive for today. If you found this exploration of Tsutomu Yamaguchi's story insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe to Curiosity Unlocked for more captivating journeys into history and the human experience.